Thanks for the welcoming. It's one of my favorite things about 12-step meetings is a bunch of strangers getting together and actually saying hello to each other. It's really beautiful. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for the invite. And it's really good to be here. Right. Well, for me, the place that I like to start is saying out loud just a prayer for myself to really show up in a way that is useful. So my prayer is, God, may I have the right attitude in my heart and the right order in my mind and the right words on my lips to say something useful and helpful for everybody. So, it's really an honor to speak and share. It's something that in my recovery journey has been instrumental in helping me have more clarity over my life and to really continue on this amazing wisdom tradition of passing along stories of experience, strength, and hope. So it really is an honor to be part of that process. I have learned so much from being able to identify with other people's share. So sharing is good service for me. It's also, I get served by everybody else when people share back their experiences of strength and hope. So today's share for me, I'm actually more nervous than I usually am. And that is coming from the place that I'm at in recovery. I've been in recovery for almost 10 years. The first time I hit the rooms, I was probably 13 or 14. I'll get into that later. But what's going on with me right now in recovery is that I've been in ACA for five-ish years, 6 years. And the first 3 years, I was kind of like kicking and screaming. Even though I loved ACA, I really fought with program and authority and defects of character. And so it's been a couple years since I've been really committed to the program. And I'm also in DA, the money program. And the inventorying that I'm doing in both programs right now has opened up a really big portion of my life that I haven't inventoried before in program. And the result of that has been a lot of clarity over just what happened in my life and the layers of reactions and survival strategies that I developed, and how those things still play out in my life today, even with all the recovery time I have and how amazing my life is. That, as we say in program, like, it infects us then and it affects us today. And the beauty of what's happening with me in recovery right now is I have enough time and tools and support that I can really see my life with a level of clarity and detail that I haven't been able to see before. And that feels really intimate with myself and very vulnerable to do a long share, because I'm aware that the length of time that I have here will be the first time that I will say my whole story out loud with the level of clarity that I have now. And that's really scary for me because, like the rest of us in ACA, like, I learned, like, don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. What I also learned very young is lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, run, and fight. And what that turned into is also a type of rules and culture and way of living that I created, where I built a double life. And I really mastered hiding a lot of things that I was doing. And so I will tell you the story of my ACA journey and how I learned to live that way, and what it looks like in my life today, and also what it looks like going forward, having sane visions of a sustainable future, which for me is a miracle that I would even be able to say those words out loud, that I have a vision of a sane, sustainable future. So let's do a little time travel and go back in time to how I was raised, what I was born into, and what my life looked like. So I was born, anybody from the East Coast, you'll be familiar with the term project. So I grew up across the street from the projects on a border town near a big city. I grew up in low income housing to a father that was a garbage man, a house painter, and a teacher, and to a mother that did not work. And in my earliest memories are being in this like tiny, little, like 800 square foot cottage home, these like tiny little working class houses, with my brothers, the two parents. And some of my earliest memories are being hit, being excited when my father came home in the evening because he would bounce me on his foot while smoking cigars and giving me beer. And my mom screaming at him about like giving me beer and them arguing. And then my middle brother being beating the shit out of me all the time, and I'm really little and I don't understand. I'm like 3. These are some of my memories at 3. And I also remember being very curious and very creative and super playful and highly energetic, and really, to the adults, my range of emotion and my like vigor for like play and making things was really perplexing to them. Like the amount of questions that I would ask and my curiosity for life was really overwhelming for a family deeply steeped in emotional disconnection, disassociation, anger, tension, violence, addiction. So here I was like this naturally sweet, playful, highly imaginative kid. And, my earliest memories are of violence, confusion, and anger. And I really registered anger really young. And one of the things that happened for me growing up in a house that had a lot of addiction and dysfunction is I would fight back a lot, and I would run a lot, and I would be angry a lot because there was so much inconsistency and incongruency in what people were telling me. And to kind of give you a little bit more context around the family dynamics, like my mom is borderline personality disorder. My dad is highly anxious and very depressed. They both drink a lot, cigarette addiction, food addictions, my mom with pills and diet fads and a rageaholic. And, so that type of dynamic in the home where like my parents are really always at each other, and my mom is constantly screaming like 24/7. That woman's volume is like 10, and her favorite words are God damn it, you children, or God damn it, you boys. And then to follow that with like punishing, screaming, hitting, all kinds of shit. My dad is very like compliant in this system. They're very codependent. And so anger for me was just so prevalent, so young, looking, as I'm witnessing these like insane reactions that people around me have that are inconsistent, and the boundaries don't make sense, and the punishments being doled out don't make sense. And because I talk a lot really young, and my level of intelligence, I ask a lot of questions which just like infuriate like my mom, and I call out a lot of behavior as a kid because I just naturally it's not like I'm thinking that I'm calling out. It's just like I'm speaking honestly about what I'm witnessing, but I observe a lot. So I say things that just like irritate the shit out of my parents because I'm actually speaking truth, and as we all know, growing up in alcoholic and dysfunctional homes, the last thing that those homes need is truth. That's like the surefire way to blow the fuck up out of like any family situation is just start speaking honestly with people around you about what's going on in the house. So you can like imagine me at 5, like I'm like, this doesn't make sense, and it's just like infuriation. So I really master very, very young, this whole system of survival, which really is around how I react to my mom and my dad and my brother, which is really anger, fighting back, trying to manipulate them back to get needs met, and lying, and running. And I mastered this really, really young. And so obviously I have when I'm younger, I have a lot of problems at school. Like I get really good grades and I'm in all advanced classes, but I'm constantly in fights with other boys. And I'm constantly having problems with teachers. And so I have behavioral issues. My home life and the anger and the frustration and the fighting and the running and the asking of questions and all this stuff, like I carry that over into like my normal life at school. So I have a lot of issues. And at the same time that I'm growing and aging through that type of family system, I'm also a really, really good athlete, really young, and I excel in sports. And so I have this world where, like, in one perspective, it's like I'm a really smart kid that does really well in class when I'm not fucking around. I have a really good social network of friends. People like me, and I excel at sports. And then I go home to an insane situation. And that was my life, all the way through my teenage years. And so what that looked like in terms of an evolution of a child in an alcoholic and dysfunctional home is right around 6 or 7, I start getting involved in a lot of like petty crime. And I'm in a community where that's really normal. So really young, I'm involved in a lot of petty crime. And really organized stuff with my friends, this little clique of friends that I grew up with, and my brother. So there's a lot of like stealing and robbing and other sophisticated things that we're doing really young. And by the time that I'm preteen, I'm starting to get involved in car robberies. And then I quickly figure out the economics of drug dealing by the time that I'm 13. And I'm around a lot of gangs, and I'm in what I'm now able to say with the clarity I have now in recovery is like I am actually growing up inside of a violent home in a violent community inside of a violent culture. And so the fighting with other boys and robbing cars and getting involved in drug dealing, like I'm pretty normal for where I grew up. I'm just good at it. Like really good at it. And I'm smart enough to not join gangs, but by the time that I'm 13, 14, like I work around them, and I have friends that are in them. And so I'm 13, 14. By that time, I'm starting to traffic drugs out of New York City. I have also made it into the Olympic development program for full contact martial arts, so competitive fighting, and for soccer. By the time that I'm 13, 14, I barely go to school. And honestly, since I pretty much stopped going to school in 6th grade, like somehow I would manipulate my way through graduating, but I don't really go to school. And so by the time I hit my early teens, I am a high performing athlete. I am trafficking drugs out of New York City, and I never go home. I pretty much just run away or stay out of the house as much as I can. So by the time that I'm at this age, what I have completed is I have completed the full integration of my parents and my home life. The violence, the lying, the cheating, the manipulation that I experienced in the home, I took that and I mastered that as a skill set for how to survive on the street. Any level of violence I could see on the street was nothing compared to like my house, So having been raped and tortured as a child, beaten, demoralized, like, it's like the streets I could understand. I understood the rules. I had like mentors and people around me teaching me how to operate and how to survive. And like, I was good at it. And I was so crazy and I knew how to fight that I somehow had a level of status. And because I was non-gang affiliated, I was thought of to be even more insane. Even though I ran around with gangs, I didn't join them, and I had a lot of respect. So I have now taken all of the shit from my home and turned it into a code or a way of living out in the streets. And I never go to school, and I am in constant fights, constant interactions with police, and I'm involved in a lot of crime, laundering money, defrauding things, robbing, and a lot of drug trafficking. And so as this journey in high school progressed for me, I have a lot of run-ins with police and a lot of fighting, and eventually the behavioral problems spill out where my life really becomes unmanageable in the sense that I get kicked out of the Olympic development program for both soccer and martial arts for separate incidences, but right around the same timeline. And it has to do with me and fighting. And so I lose those two sports, and my last sport left with it was extreme sports. And because that sport at that era is not organized and sanctioned, my outside behavior wasn't flagged because it didn't bleed over into that sport. So by the time that I'm in my later teens, I am still doing a lot of extreme sports. I'm still a really good athlete, but I can't participate in any other sports. And by the time that I hit my late teens, the anger has turned into depression. I have an unbelievable amount of hypervigilance because the hypervigilance that I learned from trying to survive in the house, I just took that out to street life. And so people die around me. People get killed. The police pursue us. It's an insane world to live in. There's a lot of insane shit, and I'm not really processing it as I'm living it. It's just like one thing after another is happening. Someone tries to shoot me. Someone puts a gun to my head. I rob this drug dealer. This person robs me. This group of people try to fight me over here. And then I wind up getting into individual altercations with them. It's this is just an everyday thing. I go home to my house and it's screaming matches, and my life is just day to day, unbelievably unstable and unbelievably violent. And everything really culminates for me around 18, 19, in terms of that era where we're all getting bigger. A lot of my friends, some of them have been killed. Some people have been executed. I've had friends, that have already gone to prison. It's getting crazier and crazier. I see no hope for myself for the future, and I don't think I'm going to survive very long. So I just have this very fatalistic, nihilistic, way of living. And right around that time, this kid who I was doing business with robbed me in a drug deal at knife point, and I went crazy, and I tried to kill this kid, and I tried to pull him out of his house, and I was gonna bash his head in with a bat. This is how off my thinking is. And I'm not a psychopath when I say this. Obviously, I'm here in ACA and I have context, or I have learned how to contextualize this stuff. But I think it's important to flag this for everybody listening. Is my story is really graphic and it is really tragic. It's also really beautiful because of the life I now have. But to really understand the power of program, this is going to be the first time I'm really taking people in a talk into these parts of my life. So imagine I get robbed, I'm offended, I have to protect myself. So I grab my clique and I go to this other kid's house, and this is my strategy. Is I'm going to drag him out of the house and I'm just going to beat the shit out of him. And the kid, we can't get him out of the house. And I realized that we've made such a commotion in the projects that I'm being the whole fucking neighborhood is watching. And that incident then escalated into me being fuck this, I'm coming back later. I go to New York, some people I work with, and I order a gun, and I'm going to murder this kid. This is my thinking. And I'm driving back from New York. I've got a bunch of drugs in the car, and I've ordered this gun, and it's going to be available for me in a week. And as I'm coming back into New Jersey, there's just this voice in my head that's what are you doing? If you do this, Kevin, you'll never come back. You will always be this. Don't do this. And then the next thing that came was you're a fucking drug dealer, man. You have all the money you need. Run. Just fucking run. Just run. And that's what I did. I did not get that gun. I did not try to kill that kid. I turned around and organized some stuff with some people. I sold a shitload of drugs in a short period of time. I packed up a moving truck and I went to California. And that was the beginning of me trying to learn how to fake being a normal person. I wanted to like fake being like a civilian. And, to really understand what that means is like, I lived in a world that had a unique language, a unique culture. Like all my feelings are at that time period and for years after were really masked behind like very coded language and a type of wisdom and rites of passage that only people who have lived in that type of criminal world at that level would understand what these things are. So by the time that I'm in my early 20s, like I'm trying to just pretend I'm trying to be normal. I don't know what normal is. Like I have basically a sixth grade education, and like I'm really good at sports. I'm very intelligent, but like I've lived in this like completely outlaw world, like where I'm actually around a lot of adults and fucking psychopaths and killers and people teaching me crime and I'm good at it. So I get a lot of attention. I get people that actually want to protect me and help me because I fucking make money, and I don't talk. And so I land in my 20s, like just trying to be normal, just trying to pursue extreme sports. And like, I was able to drop out of drug dealing for a period of time. I thought it was like going to be the end. And it's like, I go to college and I just try to be normal. But it's like, as my friends who have been to war would tell me, they're like, yeah, Kevin, you don't just come out of a war like that and just go be a civilian. Like it just doesn't work that way. And I didn't know that at the time, but that's literally what's happening is like, I'm coming out of a fucking type of war and I'm trying to be like a normal person. And I just didn't know how to adjust. And didn't have the tools that I have in recovery. I was an atheist. I thought the world was fucking pointless. And was pretty much just fucked up, brutal suffering. I hadn't really separated the fact that the way I think about God at that time is really a reflection of how I think of my parents. Like I have no recovery tools, and all of my friends at that time are still connected to this world of like drugs and shit. And like, so even when I'm not dealing, it's like we're partying. So my 20s turned into was like, I eventually got back into drug dealing, but I changed the rules. And I did things to try to prevent me being exposed to a lot of street level violence. So I changed my job. And at the same time, I'm like a straight A college student. I have like, I'm in student government and like I'm racing downhill. I'm a semi-pro mountain bike athlete, extreme sports athlete, straight A college student. And I'm now trafficking drugs across the country, and I have connections in Mexico and in Southern California. And I'm basically like the logistics shipping person. Like I have the connections, I help launder the money, I get paid a percentage of things. I don't have to deal with any street level shit. I just ship it to like, one gang I know, some homies that I'm friends with in this place, and some homies that I'm friends with over here. And like, that's my business and shit. And so I'm really mastering at this time, like the false self is like how I survive, just like my friends really don't know what I do that, it's just like money's around and a few of them do business with me. So they know, but like on the average, like I have a girlfriend at the time, like she has no fucking idea where this money's coming from or why I disappear for days on end. It's like I disappear because I'm picking up drugs and then I have to process them and then I have to ship them and we have to launder money. And like, so I don't talk about this, So I'm really mastering at this time, this false self, the double life. And eventually this all like it blows up. It's a house of cards. So I get arrested by the feds and I get injured in a pro race. Like I'm semi-pro and I'm trying to go pro, and I'm at a race where if you get a certain place in this race, you bump up to pro class. So I'm on the cusp of going pro. I'm on the cusp of being able to get paid full time for extreme sports, and I'm shipping large amounts of drugs around the country. And so when I got arrested, I didn't know this at the time, but I didn't have tools for living. So my way of actually understanding reality was extreme sports and crime, and that's how I understood like life. And when those two things went away at the same time, when I got arrested by the feds and I got in a really bad crash on the bike and like mangled my spine and my feet weren't working properly. It was fucking crazy. I went nuts. I literally went nuts. I'm in my early 20s. I'm in a huge trial. Like I'm looking at 25 years or more mandatory sentence because I have so many felonies in California. They have a 3-strike policy there. So I already had felonies for drug dealing. And then I had 7 more piled on that. And so I went nuts. I really couldn't understand my feelings, and I'm dealing with anger and depression and confusion, and I just fucking implode. And so that all of the like pain, grief, suffering that I felt uh, as a kid, and all of like just the torment of like running around the streets, like I didn't know how to process it. I just internalized it as hatred, such deep hatred for life. So I basically just like went insane. I fought my case. I never said shit about the people that I worked with. I never fucking rolled on anybody. I fought that case and I won. And I won based on taking gambles. And my attorney like telling me not to do shit. And I was like, fucking do what I'm telling you. Like, I'm not going to jail. Like, I'm gonna die in fucking jail. I have no gang affiliations, and I'm not aligning. Like, anybody who knows anything about prison and jails, like you align by your race. And like wasn't gonna do that, you know? And so that means I'm fucking dead. Like, just dead. And so I was like, I can't go to prison. I fight the trial. It's like I wind up making a really risky maneuver, and I wind up getting sentenced to jail. The federal government didn't catch me with the drugs that they thought, so they let the state deal with me, and the state sentenced me. After all was said and done, I got sentenced to jail, and then I got a suspended sentence, which means if I didn't get any trouble, I'm basically on a weird type of probation parole for 5 years, with this jail sentence like looming over my head. So when that all happened, once that trial was done and I realized I wasn't going to jail, I just went even crazier. And so the drug addiction really took over from my mid 20s to my late 20s. And I had this period of just, I'm trying to kill myself intentionally. I'm trying to kill myself with drugs. I'm trying to just kill myself with anything. I'm so confused, and I hate fucking life. And like, I can't do sports anymore. My body's all fucked up, and I'm just miserable. And I somehow am able to get into grad school for the first time while just loaded on like Oxycontin and other shit. Get into grad school. And then by the time I'm in my late 20s, like I'm so fucked up on drugs, I can't even manage grad school anymore. And I had some success as an artist, and that was something that was always part of my life since I was younger. It's just a lot of creative things. And so I'm in art school, and I had success as a journalist and played in bands, and everything's just falling apart. I just like, I can't manage, just the addiction's so bad. And I keep overdosing, and I'm in and out of the hospital, and I've got shit going on with my organs. And I'm just I'm on a fast moving death train. And that just keeps spiraling and spiraling and spiraling until my late 20s. I'm married, and I've been helping my wife take care of a little baby boy that I'd known since he was like 8 months old. And I'm married to someone who I'd known for a really long time. And our relationship was really volatile. But the gift that she gave me is I overdosed one day, and she took a picture of me, and she laid it down in front of me as I woke up in the morning, and my limbs weren't working because of the way I had fallen over from the overdose. And I couldn't feel my legs, so I thought I was paralyzed. And then my wife drops this picture in front of me. And then she says, if you want to be in Brady's life, you better get your shit together. And that was the little boy. And miraculously, my legs started to work. And for anybody who's familiar with drug overdoses, actually, statistically, a lot of addicts lose their limbs from falling over and overdosing in weird positions. So it's like a miracle my legs worked. And I got up and I walked in that little boy's room. And I just started crying, and I was like, he was like my savior, I didn't know it at the time, but he was my inner child. And it was like, I didn't know this either because I didn't believe in God at the time. But God was, really trying to help me see like there was another way to live, And so I just white knuckle turkey kicked fucking opiates like right there. and it sucked and it was brutal. And I tried to do recovery and I just couldn't get situated in the fucking rooms. And so I did a first round of like kicking out of the dope. I drank a lot to deal with it. And I pretty much spent the next 6 years slowly crawling out of drug addiction. Like I would still cycle through like pretty bad drug binges, but I start to little by little like get my body back in shape, but I'm still living this weird double life. Like it's like I wind up getting good jobs and I start to stabilize. Like I train again and I have a level of physical activity. My body weight and everything start to regulate. And then I would tell my girlfriend, like, I'm going to shoot fucking morphine this weekend. Like it was bizarre, you know, just how disassociated my life was. Still no spiritual connection, still no real understanding of like what happened in my childhood. I'm so disassociated in my late 20s from this whole understanding of my childhood dynamic that my first wife tried to kill me. And I don't mean this in like a haha tried to kill me. I mean like literally there was a trial, she tried to kill me. The reason I'm sharing this is that when that happens in the state of California, you get put into a special system that has to deal with victim compensation and victim resources. So because of that incident, I was given like therapy and all kinds of support in domestic violence and a lot of really good therapy that really set me up for a lot of life changes. But one of the things they would ask me a lot is about my family of origin. And I would just be like, my family's fine. Like, this is how deep the denial system went. And then after like months and months of therapy, you know, the head psychologist is like, Kevin, people don't end up here without something happening in their home. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. I'm just a fucked up person. I'm just a bad kid. Like I did all this shit. This is how warped and how much I'm identifying with the laundry list traits, how much I've integrated the family story of like, I'm worthless and I'm the problem, and how strong the denial system is of being able to identify what I lived through and why I would be in the situations that I'm in. So by the time that I show up in my early 30s, I still can't understand what the fuck is going on in my life. By the time that I'm 33, I have a high power position inside of a natural food company. I have an amazing salary. I'm in amazing shape, physical shape. And yet I can't understand why I have like an allergy to my family. I've like really distanced from like all of my childhood friends, which many of them I were like part of my little drug dealing like enterprise and clique, or they were around me and we've all grown up since we were kids. So I'm like distancing from them. I have really unstable relationships with like newer friends, and I have really unstable like relationships with women. And I occasionally go on these like big drug binges, and I can't fucking understand what the fuck is going on. So at 33, and I'm still an atheist at this point. So at 33, I go on this like massive drug binge. I mean like a $10,000 drug binge. And I know it's 10,000 because I had bonused out on this job that I was leaving, and I got recruited to go to this other job in LA. So I have like a lot of money flowing through it, like because of the work I'm doing, and it's all legal. And I get this $10,000 like bonus out, and I blew all that on drugs in like 4 weeks. And during this drug binge, I remember just at the end of it, talking to myself and being like, I hate my fucking life. Like, I don't fucking understand. Like I do all this civilian shit. This is how I'm talking to myself, is like, I do all these things that normies do. Like, no offense to anybody who's lived outside this, but like, this is how a lot of us like understand like normal people, like you're normies. Like you've never seen a jail cell. Like you've never seen how street life works, how organized crime works. Like you're a civilian. And for those of us that live in that world, like we see institutions like that too, like banks, governments, military, like it's all the same part of the same corrupt, organized, everything's fucking organized crime to us. So I'm like talking to myself, and I'm like, I try to live in this normie way within these fucking systems and all this shit. And like, what the fuck is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And I'm just like, ask myself, do you want to die, Kevin? Like, do you want to try to kill yourself again? And it's like, well, we've tried that so many times. And by the time I'm in my early 30s, I've had well over 24 suicide attempts. I've been in mental institutions. I've fucking tried everything possible. I just don't die. And it's not like I haven't tried hard. It's like I've eaten 300 milligrams of fucking Valium, one shot. I've done 200 milligrams of Xanax, one shot. I've done, if you know Oxycontin, I've done 420 milligrams of Oxycontin, one shot, not died. Those are just a few incidences of me trying to actively kill myself with drugs. So by the time I'm in my early 30s and I ask myself this question, it's like I've tried to kill myself and I don't die. And I'm like, well, is it you really want to die, Kevin, or you just don't like your life? And the response was, I don't like my life. It's like, okay, well, would you like to like live a different way? And it's like, yeah, but I don't know how. So then the dialogue back to myself was like, okay, so you want to live, you don't like how you're living, you don't know how to live. It's like, no, I don't. It's like, do you want to try to get help? And the answer was like, yes. So this is the beginning of where recovery starts for me. Right after that, I moved to LA. A couple months later, I asked around for some people to find me a doctor that specializes in child abuse. I actually don't really know what happened to me, even though I have memories. I can't. My brain is everything's so fractured and compartmentalized. I can't clearly tell you a clear story about what my family is and what I grew up through. So someone helps me find this therapist. I talk to a couple different people, but this one that was referred to me, I get on the phone with her, and it's really interesting. She's like, "Hey, you were referred to me, and I don't usually work with adults, but your story is really interesting. I want to talk to you, and then we'll make a decision if I'm going to work with you." So we have a conversation, and this woman decides that she's going to work with me, even though she primarily specializes in children. This is the beginning of where recovery starts for me, and the reason for that is that during this time, I was taken, this is early 2000, so I was taken through unconventional therapeutic techniques that are now widely popularized, and there's a lot of research behind them and all that stuff. So again, this is just going to be a warning for everybody. Is like I was taken through various types of therapeutic modalities with MDA, MDMA, and other psychedelic compounds with psychologists. So when I got to LA and I started that process, like it was just like groundbreaking, like what was going on with me, and like starting to have clarity of like what I lived through. And so what wound up happening is that I'm early on in this therapeutic process. I'm in these therapeutic sessions where a lot of the sexual abuse stuff, where like I had these compartmentalized memories start to become more clear, and I could tell you that my parents were alcoholics, but really understanding that the home was like violent, even though I could describe to you violent situations, I couldn't flag that and clock that as me experiencing violence. It's like the equivalent of me telling someone blah, 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 blah. And they're like, that's really violent. And me going like, oh, it is? The insanity is so normalized that I can talk to you about insane situations like I'm reading you like a fucking book about nature. Like, and I could tell you that people tried to kill me or type of life-threatening situations I've been in, but it's just like, yeah, that's my normal everyday life. So what's happening at this time is with these like compounds that I'm working with in this therapeutic modality, like I'm starting to like realize like, oh shit. And like things are starting to integrate and make more sense. And one day this therapist walks in the office and she's like, I'm going to do something, Kevin, that's very illegal, and you need to really understand the risk that I'm taking. And again, this is the era before all the psychedelic legislation. So she's like, I'm going to send you to another psychologist. And he works with ayahuasca. I think it's going to really change your life. So I'm still an atheist at this time. I still have lingering drugs and alcohol problems. And I'm just basically like, like in my world, I'm just a fucking fractured, non-optimized human being. And if these fucking doctors tell me that like I can do, like they can help me, give me these compounds and I will not be batshit crazy, like fuck it, I'm all in. Like just fix me. This is how I think at this time. Just fucking fix me. And so I go talk to this doctor, and then he brings me into this ceremony, and it's a very spiritual process. It's not therapeutic in the what you would think of as conventionally. So I go to this ceremony, and I fucking scream for hours in this ceremony and cry, and I like like really start to get a picture of like the tragedy of my life and my family. And and I also come into conscious contact like with higher power. And I wake up in the morning and the doctor, they do the integration circle, and the psychologist is like, Kevin, and asks me to share first. And the first thing out of my mouth is, there's definitely a God. I got that wrong. And I have to, like, my life needs radical changing. And so that, I mark that as the beginning of my recovery, because I really started to recover a sense of sanity and wholeness. I understood that there was a path forward for me. I understood that that path was a spiritual path, and that it was going to require me to make major, major, major life changes. And I didn't know what that was, but I came out of that first experience recognizing that, like, my commitment to God was like, whatever you need me to do, whatever, however long it takes, like, I'll go anywhere, I will do anything you need me to do, I will go anywhere you need me to go. Like, I am so down for whatever this journey is of, like, of healing and change, whatever, I'm all in. And that was my commitment. And so that set me up for a multi-year process of working with multiple psychologists, specialized trauma therapists, and somatic trauma therapists, and a lot of plant medicine. And so I would have a lot of doctors around me, and I would be in therapy, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week. And I was in a protocol, with doctors, and sometimes with traditional, what people call shamans, but that word isn't really specific to every indigenous group. So it's not really accurate to say that, but you could say the medicine carrier or the witch doctor. So I'm in this process of modern doctors that understand trauma also working with me with inside of indigenous rites and different spiritual practices. And little by little, I started to really recover sanity, and I started to really see, what happened to me. And I started to learn and to train with the support of doctors how to come in conscious contact with my trauma, to love myself wholly, and to integrate my experiences and learn to regulate my nervous system. And this was many, many, many years in the making. In the beginning, the whole time, they're all trying to get me into 12-step. And I'm like, fuck 12-step. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. And I had just such bad experiences coming up with 12-step. I just didn't want to go. And I wound up getting divorced a couple years into this journey. My wife at that time, my second wife, was borderline. And then, like, I pretty much have, like, my first wife was borderline. Like, I just married my mom. And so I come into this awareness around my codependency and all this shit while I'm working in these medicine ceremonies, and it's going through a lot of therapy. And the whole time the therapists are like, you should really go to CODA, Kevin. You should really go to ACA. I'm like, yeah. I have enough fucking shit to deal with. And they're also trying to get me to talk a lot about my criminal life, and I'm not going there either. I'm like, let's just deal with the family of origin, the childhood shit. Like, the kid gets the attention. Like, let's just deal with that. So eventually, like, as I wake up to the codependency, as I get divorced for the second time, I am able to acknowledge my codependency. I'm able to start to acknowledge the pattern of, like, that I've repeated with women, and kind of picking women where I'm going to be the victim and they're going to be the victimizer, and different varying degrees of violence. And I go into this period of, like, I divorce my wife, and I go into a period of, like, no women, no dating, no sex. And it's not like I'm a promiscuous person, right? I've had 3 partners in 10 years, right? So it's not like I was dealing with like a sex addiction or a love addiction where I have lots of partners. I'm dealing with a love addiction and codependency of how I pair with a partner. And that was the doorway for me to go back into programs. So I went back into AA, and I went into ACA. AA had a really fucking hard time with my plant medicine work. And so you could imagine how that turned out being AA. And ACA, I loved it, but I really had a hard time with defects of character. And I had a really hard time, really connecting the dots, obviously, to my temperament and my way of looking at the world, and a lot of the crime that I was involved in the drug dealing. It was still really hard for me for years to really connect those dots. So my first couple of years of ACA were me, but like easily integrating ACA into my therapeutic work and my plant medicine work. And I really saw the benefits of having those three modalities to work with, you know, the physiological, neurological benefits of like what's happening in these plant medicine ceremonies, and the spiritual benefit, the therapy to really help me like organize and orient and integrate, and 12-step and ACA for like day-to-day rituals and tools for sane living. So the first couple of years was really me like easily integrating those modalities, but I really struggled, you know, with being able to get really honest with myself about my defects of character, and that made it really hard for me to grow the first couple of years in recovery. And eventually, I had this moment where I just realized like I give up. It was like another deep moment of like a bottoming out. Like I give up. Like I just do what the fuck they tell me to do. Just do what they tell me to do. Like get a sponsor, just do these fucking steps, and just like stop fighting the defects of character and just do what you're told. And it just like clicked for me. And I already had a deep spiritual practice. I already had a lot of tools, but this was like the next frontier. And so that set me up to spend the next couple years like really coming into contact with like my role in perpetuating the disease of dysfunction. And you know, it's taken me a couple more years. You know, a lot of this stuff I'm sharing with you, right? Like when I started to take programs serious, I'm in my late 30s. I'm 43 right now. So really it was about 3.5 years ago that I started to clearly see that I was still like in an internal war with myself, and that the only way forward was to really learn how to collaborate with all my feelings. And there was a turning point in me learning that it was okay for me to start to look at things in a new and different way, to see that I did have defects of character, that I could harm other people, that there were a lot of things that I did out of survival that actually like did a lot of damage to myself and other people, that the anger that I felt as a child burned so strong in my life that it actually like destroyed a lot of life opportunities for me. And so what started to happen 3.5 years ago is I started to really clearly see how pervasive the recreation of my home life was in my day-to-day life. Like it's really easy, you know, it was easier for me to see something like, oh shit, my mom's borderline, and like a lot of my relationships with women, my 2 marriages, both women are borderline. Like, oh, okay, of course I would recreate that type of system. And that shit, that even took me a couple of years to get that together. But to start to connect the dots, like I did really well in business when I came into business in my 30s, and I got an executive MBA. And I ran an innovation firm, and I was a management consultant. So I've had, you know, Fortune 10 clients, like, you know, the FDA, you know, Microsoft, you know, companies you haven't even heard of that are fucking huge doing shit in the world, you know, the ag industry. Like I've been in a lot of places, and I've done a lot of really amazing work in those spaces. And I ran my fucking innovation firm like I was selling drugs. Instead of drugs, it's my intelligence. Instead of a turf war over like fucking distribution, it's like turf war over like our IP and intellectual property. And if I felt threatened, I'll fucking destroy you, but I'll destroy you with my intelligence, and I'll protect people like in my crew. Like I have really refined animal pack mentality. Like I'm a really good animal, a really fucking good animal. And it's a cool skill set to have when I know what I'm doing with it and when I'm applying it with consciousness, but not so good when it's like bleeding around in my life and I'm hyper vigilant. I have high degree of distrust for people, and that I ultimately view like the economics of my life like a drug supply chain. Like that's not really a sustainable way to live, and also not really useful when running in the background of like the operating system of Kevin is like, I'm supposed to be dead. I'm not even supposed to be here in my fucking mid-40s, let alone like think about a fucking retirement plan. Like, what the fuck is that? So imagine like what started to happen about 3.5 years ago is like I start to really realize like how warped a lot of my perception is and why it's warped. And I start to be able to connect the pieces to the minutia and nuances of how I was raised, and then what I saw acted out in the home, and then how I integrated that, and then played that out in the world. It's like my home: lie, cheat, steal, and fight. Like that's what they did in the house. So it's like, what do I do when I go out in the world? Like I learn how to lie, cheat, steal. I manipulate systems, and I update my strategy over time. I get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to rob other people. I'm just going to steal from fucking institutions, and I traffic drugs. Like I update, but I'm really recreating the same thing over and over again. And it's like when I get into some issue when I'm like in my 30s in my business, where someone steals some intellectual property from us, it's like I'm in a fucking war with them, except there's no weapons involved. But my nervous system and my mental model, I'm in a war. And that's what I started to realize as I came into my late 30s and early 40s, is like, holy shit. But it was really slow for me to get to where I'm at today. And so where I'm at today is like, I have enough time in recovery where I'm starting to inventory all of the criminal behavior, and I'm being asked by both my sponsors to write everything down that I can remember, all of it. It's the first time in my life like that I had the clarity to be able to say I grew up in a violent home, inside of a violent community, inside of a violent culture. And by having that understanding, it's given me a lot of relief and compassion for how insane the disease is for all of us, and that the way out is always like a spiritual path. And by building up the tools that I've built up in recovery to get to where I'm at, I have the relationship with my inner world, with the kid, the teenager, my young 20s, like all of my inner world, we're very collaborative. We have dialogue, we coordinate, we make decisions together. And a lot of that I've learned through therapy, through working with psychedelics, and through 12-step. And because I have that relationship now, I've been able to build up a good rapport with myself that we're taking out things that like we've never taken out before. And there's a lot of trust there so that I can do this type of work. So what I'm doing right now in recovery is I am inventorying like 30 something years of my life. And I've done a lot of inventories in recovery, but this is the first inventory where I can actually talk about things like what it was like when people were deciding if they were going to execute me or not. And I'm like, I'm sitting in a room and other people are making this decision. What was it like for me to like rob people and then also be robbed back? What was it like for me to realize that like when I'm younger, like I lie in relationships with women, and then when I'm older, like I experience that back. I start to be able to clearly now see the ping ponging between victim victimizer, between like lying and being lied to. It's like I start to see the karma of my life much more clearly. And I don't see it from the perspective of like, oh, I'm a bad person, I don't attack myself. It's just an understanding. There's like a compassion, for it. And there's self-love. And the phase that I'm in right now is like loving myself for all the things that I did out of survival, and having the faith in God that somehow God is going to help me clean up all of this. And my joke right now is like, if I were to make one fucking amends for the rest of my life for the shit that I've done, I couldn't finish all my amends before I die. There's that much stuff in there. And that's okay. That's okay. And I find it really beautiful that it's like, I've done all kinds of work in recovery where I clearly understand what I'm doing. And I understand why I can make an amends in a certain way. Like it's harder for me to be like, what amends do I make for robbing another drug dealer? Like, I know that the mentality of fighting and taking and that type of stuff, like I understand that perpetuates the disease of dysfunction, and that karmically I want to clean that up. But I don't know how the fuck that works. And I don't feel bad for robbing another drug dealer who fucked me over in another drug deal. Like I don't actually feel bad about that. Not to say that I won't as I learn more about my feelings, but I don't feel bad about that. It's just what happens. It's the game. And I recognize that on faith, God is going to show me how to live a different way. because I don't rob other drug dealers nowadays, but do I have types of gauging of threats? Like, and if I feel backed into a corner, will I do crazy shit? Yes, I will. What that looks like now is like 3.5 years ago, as I walked out of my innovation company and decided to reboot my life all over again, I I had a crazy work addiction that I came into awareness about. I needed fucking help. I burned through all my savings. I bought a farm in Costa Rica. I had no money left. So what I did was I just decided to pull all the liquidity out of all the credit lines I had left. And because I'd been making really good money in my 30s, I had a really fucking nice credit line. I had about 10 grand left in liquidity. I just fucking took it. And I took it with the following thinking: fuck those banks. It's just money off a ledger. They're all fucking crooks. I'm going to default on my debt. It's going to fall off my credit window. I don't give a fuck. Who gives a shit? Like, that's how crazy my thinking can get, because that's how I thought most of my life. It's like, I do what I need to do to survive. It doesn't really fucking matter anyway. None of this shit fucking matters. So it's really interesting to be where I'm at in recovery now, which is like, whoa, Kevin, like the mental model has been so infected by growing up in that type of culture and that way of thinking that it's in everything. And now I have an opportunity to revisit all of these different incidences by doing the step work, by having fellow travelers, by going to meetings. I get to organize this part of my life, and I get to reorder it with sane thinking. And this is what I understand as like the amends process. And so what doing this work has enabled me to do is like, I have the best version of my life ever. I would have never imagined that I would live in Costa Rica, that I work in the health and wellness space. I have a nonprofit and a for-profit, and I get to work with other addicts. I get to work with other people dealing with the crazy shit that I come from. I have this amazing toolbox with health and wellness and like in phytochemicals and food medicine and culinary alchemy. And like, I really understand body training. And like, I've been through all kinds of stuff with trauma training to understand how to be of service for other people. And so I have this amazing life beyond my wildest dreams. Like, all the promises that ACA says, like, they're real. Like, I used to think like, that sounds nice. I wonder what that would be like one day. And then one day comes and I'm like, fuck, like, this is real. Like, I have more anxiety-free days in my body than ever. I never would have known that my body could be so anxiety-free. I have normal life shit that happens that I don't panic about or make drama about. I have stable, loving, emotionally available friends. I have a deep spiritual practice, and I work a lot of recovery. I go to 1 to 3 meetings a day. I have 2 sponsors. I have action partners. Like, I do a lot, and I love it. And there's no way that I could have ever imagined that this would be my life. And that is the benefit of a slow, gradual recovery, long, slow recovery, and just willingness. Like, there's so many things that I'm doing in program right now that I had to pray for the willingness to have the willingness to have the willingness for it. And then God answers my prayers, and I'm like, that I resent you, God. You gave me everything I fucking wanted. Now this is a lot of work. And then I get better. I keep getting better. I keep seeing things more clearly. I can be more honest about my life. I can speak with more self-esteem and self-worth to other people. And I can be of better service to other people by dealing with my own shit. And it's really amazing. Like, God waited till I had enough stability in my body that I could take out the insane things that I'm taking out now. And I'm getting better as a result of it. You know, and that is the magic of program, is that these promises come to all of us if we show up and do the work. You know, just being willing to do stuff and surrounding ourselves with other people that are doing that work. You know, and I pick a lot of fellow travelers and I pick sponsors because they actually have skill sets that I don't have. And they can say things and give me feedback that changes my life. And I surround myself with friends like that. So I feel really blessed that I have lived this insane life where the old narrative would be like, I should be punished for this. Like, I shouldn't get to be of service. I shouldn't get to live in Costa Rica. I shouldn't be able to get out of the disease of insanity and dysfunction. like I should be fucked. Because everybody that I grew up with in my family, all fucking active addicts. Everybody's dying of a fucking addiction. Fucking just everybody, multiple generations. Like I shouldn't have this life, but I do. And so this is where I understand, like, I'm a miracle. I'm grateful. I'm useful. I matter, you know? And yeah. And then that comes through the grace of God. So for anybody that's new or early on in program, or anybody like struggling further along, it's like everything for me comes back to prayer. All of it comes back to prayer, because I don't really know how anything happens in reality, where thoughts come and go from, why I'm attracted to a more loving, sane, affectionate way of living now when I come from fucking brutal violence. I don't know why I'm able to say the things I'm saying to you right now. Like I do know that I'm part of some larger living ecosystem that some will call God. God for me is nature, it's the universe, it's alive, it's intelligent, and things happen on my behalf. And if I show up and I do the work and I pray, and I pray a lot, I have a lot of ritual in my life, a lot of practice. And if I just do that and I just do the work, and I talk and I just work, nature seems to order and organize things around me on my behalf. And then I look around me and I go, thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you. And then I want to just share that with other people. And that's what recovery has become for me. It's like, pray and fucking pray harder. And if you're fighting with something, Kevin, pray about that. And if you don't want to change something, pray about that. And just pray and wait. Be patient. Let things evolve and change. Feel the discomfort of not acting out or chasing for someone emotionally. Feel the discomfort of inventorying things and not knowing how you feel. Just let yourself feel things and be okay with what you're feeling. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Be curious about it. Be loving with yourself. Be gentle. And God, nature, prayer, that is like the model for me of how to love myself, right? And I get that in terms of visions and felt experience. Then I get to go into ACA and I get to mechanically practice it, my men's group, inner loving parent stuff, and and other groups that I go to. And it's like I get to be with other people to practice the tools of sane living every day. And they hold me accountable. And the more I do this, like the more that this like energy builds up, and the more I'm not reenacting my childhood, the more I'm living in my authentic self. The more that I'm doing that, the more I can contribute something beautiful and useful to the ecosystem. And this is how I've come to understand what it really means to like break generational dysfunction and disease. Is like what I contribute back to life is a unique expression of my body, my mind, my soul at a given point in time that is not a reaction of what has happened to me or things that I have done in the past. And that to me is like my vision for my life is that I continue to stay emotionally sober and sane so that I can give back beautiful things to nature after having given a lot of destruction. And that no matter what I've done, God gives me grace always. 100% of the time, I'm always welcome home. 100% of the time, I am forgiven. And 100% of the time, I am given tools for change. And if I just follow that, I can make beautiful things. I can change my history. I can show up in new and unique ways, and I can offer something beautiful back to life and be part of the collective stream of love and collaboration and community and music and dance and celebration and healthy foods and taking care of our bodies, like all of the really awesome things that I'll like make an ecosystem thrive. I can be part of that through prayer, through getting that clarity and then taking action. And that's where I want to end today, is that program is a spiritual program based on action. ACA is an action-oriented program. And the only way to get into that action is that we have to take chances. We have to be vulnerable. We have to experiment in relationships. We have to try on new ways of thinking. We have to challenge the ways that we think about things. We have to really be willing to act differently. So that's where I want to end today, is just that beautiful invitation to everyone that no matter how fucked up our backgrounds are, no matter how insane our thinking is, every little moment is an opportunity to pray and take a different action. There's no waiting room for that. It's just as simple as pray, ask for help, take action. And that action doesn't always have to be some big extravagant thing. Sometimes the action is just praying and listening. Sometimes the action is changing a behavior. Sometimes the action is writing things down. Sometimes the action is making a major life change. Spending time with ourselves, with our feelings, and praying brings a lot of clarity to what is right action. So I pray for everybody in these rooms and outside of these rooms for really intimate, loving relationship with God, intimate, loving relationship with self, and clarity to take right action where we feel really nourished and really fulfilled, even when we're going through scary, chaotic, uncomfortable things in life. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and take action by sharing my story. It was really interesting for me to speak this long and very vulnerable. And I'm just feeling really, really honored. And I look forward to hearing all of your stories now. So thank you, everybody. Pass. Thank you, higher power.
Oh, thank you. Khalil, please unmute everyone.